Hi, folks. Welcome to our online discussion done right, creating a community of inquiry for your students, which is an introduction to PACBAC for Pima faculty. We're here with PACBAC's Rakita Hampton and Pam Lizardi, who is also a fabulous Pima faculty member, and myself. And we're going to go ahead and dive in. Rakita, take it away.
Yay, welcome everyone. So excited to have you all here. So we are going to be talking a little bit about PACBAC, and I want to first introduce myself. So my name is Rakita, as Reed said. I work as the PACBAC curriculum consultant here at Pima. So I will be the main contact for all things PACBAC. I will work to get your courses up to speed, train faculty members, adjuncts, help with student support. So really all avenues that have to do with PACBAC. Included on this slide here, and you'll see this QR code a few times throughout the presentation. This is how you can scan this code and let us know if you are interested in using PACBAC in any of your courses that you might be working with, or if you just like to have a more detailed conversation with me about your courses so we can see if PACBAC will be a good fit for you. So just keep those things in mind.
And then if we would go to the next slide, we'll introduce Pam.
So we're here with Pam, the wonderful, wonderful Pam Lizardi. I'll allow her to introduce herself a little bit.
Oh, yeah, thank you very much. And I appreciate all the compliments. Yes, my name is Pam Lizardi. I am new to Pima Community College, but I've been teaching online for over 20 years. I started teaching online in the military, where I spent over 22 years of my life. And then I've been teaching at Mesa Community College for the last, well, since 2002, so almost 20 years with them. But most importantly for this discussion, I've been using PACBAC kind of since its creation, 2.5, 3 years now, I think Rakita and I figured out. And I just sing its praises as an instructor, and we'll get into all of the benefits of that, but that's the main reason why I'm here, and who am I?
Thanks, Pam. We really appreciate you being here.
You're welcome.
And then just a brief note, just to reiterate process, I'm putting a link into the chat feed. If you press the right arrow once or twice, it'll show also a QR code for those of you viewing it after the fact. If you want to take your phone and take a snapshot or go to this link, this will allow us to know that you've attended. And this is important for those of you attending live or as a pre-recorded webinar, so that we can keep track of who's actually interested in the tool and what class you might be using it within in the near future. Rakita and I will both have access to this sign-in sheet. It's not a teaching and learning center sign-in sheet. This is a roster that keeps track of who's watched this video, because anybody currently requesting the tool at Pima Community College will also be asked to watch this video to get a brief introduction to the tool. One final note, if you might full screen your screen share, Rakita, just to make it a little bit larger, it'd be fantastic if that's possible. If not, it doesn't really matter because we see it pretty well regardless.
Yeah, it won't let me make it any bigger.
Fair enough. Anyway, we're glad to have you. We're going to dive in. This is 1 hour, and we're going to go through a little bit of pedagogy and a lot of practice. And if you have questions, please use the chat feed as we progress. We may be able to address those as we move forward, or we may hold until the end of the presentation for those Q&A. Thanks so much, and let's keep moving.
Awesome. Thanks, Reed. So I want to start by giving a little bit of background on PACBAC. So PACBAC is an inquiry-based tool. Really, it's an online discussion tool that allows for instructors to really be very strategic about the work that they're doing in online courses. We have a PACBAC, like a digital assistant built into our software that is an AI assistant, and it works to help with some of those lower level interactions that you as instructors have to do in online learning. So moderating, coaching, things of that nature. I'll go in a lot more depth about what our AI does and how it can be used, but I also wanted to very briefly talk a little bit about some of the research that PACBAC has done. So PACBAC is running a multi-year research study with a number of community colleges, of which Maricopa Community College is included, so nearby, in Ivy Tech and a bunch of others around the country as well. In our initial findings, these are some of the results that we found. So first, we got through kind of the surveys and such, we found that 93% of the instructors were happier. They quoted themselves being happier, but they were spending less time managing their online classes using PACBAC than the traditional discussion board. We also noticed that students were just doing a better job overall in their discussions. They were citing their sources at a rate 2 times higher than on the traditional discussion board. And they were actually writing more words in their posts, about 160% longer on PackBack than on the traditional discussion board. I'll talk a little about how we coach students to do these actions using our AI. And then the last piece that we've noticed is that we're seeing more engagement overall, where students are posting more than they are required to in a given week. And we've been seeing instances where there have been a reduction in the number of D, Fs, and Ws in courses where PackBack is being used. So some really, really interesting research that we're conducting there. Any questions there? Perfect.
As
And
we move forward, I want to reinforce the idea that for those of you getting started, that there is a high success rate among instructors, an increase in quality and engagement. We're going to dive in and show you what that looks like in a moment.
So to really get an understanding, I just wanted to highlight 2 pieces that I like everyone to keep in mind when thinking about online courses. And it's really that intentionality aspect of it. When you're designing your online courses, you want to be very intentional about all resources that you're including, all activities that you're having your students do, so that they are getting the most value out of your course and so that they're putting their best foot forward. So we want to have reasonable expectations for yourself as an instructor, and you want to have reasonable expectations for your students. And I work directly with you all to help set up these expectations and to be a support system for you as you're making this shift. And then there's also, there are small actions that can be taken to make online discussion as successful as possible. So I want you all to leave this session with some concrete things that you know that could be done in PackBack should you decide to integrate it into your course. So I wanted to highlight some of the unique challenges with online instruction. And I also wanted to touch base with Pam on this question here. To want to know, what are some of the things, Pam, that you have been seeing in your online discussion courses, maybe before you adopted PackBack?
All right, so I have to think back for that because I, like I said, been using it for a while. But I can tell you one of the unique challenges or struggles that I saw was the amount of time I, as the instructor, had to spend on minute stuff. Like, this you didn't really answer the question. The answer needs to be at least a paragraph in length. Please provide a resource to your opinion on the question. I mean, just that mundane, non-important stuff. The amount of time I had to spend prior to PackBack was just, I was teaching 3 or 4 classes at a time. This was prior to them setting a 9-credit limit class on an adjunct, and I was doing a lot of teaching. And so you're talking 100 students. It was a lot of time. And that was the most challenge for me. And I can tell you that 50% of that or more is gone. And it's replaced with quality time spent on content and not on minutia.
Speaking of minutia, I just want to note that Brooke Anderson chimes into the chat feed saying yes with exclamation marks. I think this is a common concern.
Yes, Brooke, I wholeheartedly agree. And it's like, we want to provide quality instruction. It's all about making the learning better for the student and making it easier. Not about just copying and pasting regurgitated stuff about what I did or didn't do in a discussion board. And so that was my biggest challenge and the one that I think benefits instructors the most. And then the other benefits are all benefits for students, and we'll get into those.
Thank you so much for sharing.
You're welcome.
And so really what that shows is that even under ideal circumstances, online instruction has unique things, challenges than what you might see inside of the classroom. So, whether it be having to set up an online course with little time and few resources, or the fact that you're using multiple pieces of technology and figuring out how are you going to integrate those things together to make this class as seamless as possible for your students. So,
and Rakita, can I add one more thing, Rakita? I wanted to add, and especially when you talked about moving online, and like we all had to do with COVID, and I've had to help instructors. One of the other huge challenges was making your discussions viable questions or scenarios. And one of the things that PackBack does to help you with that is featured posts. We didn't talk about that in our little planning thing, but I had made myself a note of it, and this was the perfect spot to bring it up.
Yeah, definitely. So that's really, I'm happy that you mentioned that, Pam, because there's a number of features within PackBack that was intentionally designed based on the challenges that we know exist in online learning. So I'm very excited to be able to kind of walk you all through what some of those issues are that we're seeing. I added in a funny image of a Zoom. You all might be familiar with this. So really what we're recognizing are just some big barriers. And the biggest challenge is just building effective and engaging online communities where students are coming in, they're excited to be learning, they want to interact with their peers and with their instructor as well, even though they're not having that classroom time. So how do we keep them excited about this course? So that is really the questions that we were thinking about when we decided to create PackBack as a platform. So we knew that the challenges were many, and so we needed to be very intentional about how we designed our software. And so we looked at two really key studies to inform us. The first piece is the idea of self-determination theory. So this intrinsic motivation for anyone to do something. And really we were looking at what intrinsically motivates students. And what we found is that it's a combination of purpose. So students need to understand that the work that they're doing serves a purpose in their lives so that they don't see this as just busy work to pass the time. There also needs to be a sense of autonomy in the course that they're doing. And we do this through the students asking their own questions on PackBack. So it's a shift in the paradigm of how you all might be used to doing online discussion, where you might be used to providing prompts and then your students just come and respond directly to you. On PackBack, the students are asking the questions and they're responding to their classmates. You as the instructor can chime in to act as a facilitator and not necessarily the guide, if you will, kind of facilitate their learning and not just dictating facts at them.
That's a really important point, Rakita, that I just want to reinforce here, that it's students posing the questions. That is a shift that folks may not be used to. So I wanted to emphasize that. We're 15 minutes in, and we'll keep it moving. For the person that just arrived, there'll be a link in the chat feed to sign in.
Perfect. And then the last piece, of course, is mastery. So students feeling like they're building up their competencies over time. So really self-determination theory is important. And then the other piece that we looked at was Bloom's taxonomy. So we understood while researching ed tech tools that the majority of them are really only hitting these low levels of Bloom's, remembering, understanding, like Pam said, so they can kind of regurgitate that information on an exam or in a paper. PackBack is designed to help students hit these higher levels. We want them to apply and analyze, create, and evaluate information from their course. Awesome. And then I also put in another meme that I thought you all would like. This is what we might be seeing on discussion boards. I like that you added 2 and 2 together and got 4, very insightful. This is what we don't want to see on PackBack.
No. No, we don't.
Exactly. This is what we're coaching students not to do. And instead, we're coaching them to create posts like this. So I'll give you a second to kind of read the question and see the format that the student wrote in.
And just for context, this is a question posed by a student at Maricopa Community College. And it is not posed by a teacher, it's posed by a student.
One of my students, I believe.
Yes, yeah, this is from one of your current communities, yes. So I thought this was awesome because it's a great question, but the student has formatted their post really well. They're bolding things that are very important. They're bringing in additional sources as well. So this is what we want students to be doing.
Absolutely.
So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to actually pop into PackBack itself, into a community. Pam, this is one of your current PackBack communities. I would like to first put the caveat that I have this on presenter mode. So all of the names of the students are hidden, but these are student questions. So when you come onto PackBack, the first thing that you will notice is that it is a really pretty site, but also it is an ongoing thread. So we designed PackBack to look a lot like social media sites that students are already used to using. So it works a lot kind of like a Twitter, where you have a main post and then your responses are threaded directly underneath that main post. So then you can keep track of it. This is for just intuitiveness when a student comes onto PackBack. typically what they're doing is they're asking one question and two responses. So I want to walk through how we are coaching students to the level of this work. But before I do that, I want to talk a little bit about setting expectations before your students even come to class. So Pam, how do you go about kind of setting the expectation of what you want your students to do in PackBack?
Okay, so first of all, PackBack also provides you the tools that you need to start your students off. So if we were to pull up one of my classes at the very top of one of my class feeds, not in PackBack, but in Canvas or in D2L, it's going to have a little video that says how to be successful in PackBack. Again, that's not something that I created. It's something that PackBack gave me and I use. Number one. Number two, I do a welcome video. I invite students to join me in that welcome video, but if it's an asynchronous class, it's not mandatory. So I record it and I tell them again how to be successful in PackBack. There's 3 things they need to do. They need to answer a question that I've posted most of the time, probably half of the time, I'll say that. And then after they get comfortable with PackBack, they have to post a question of their own and respond to 2 other students. Now, Rakita's showing you one of my classes. That class is a really small class, but it still has the appropriate. And then the things that I like to do to encourage the success in this class is a couple of things. One is, Rakita, if you could move your or circle around where you put the spark. This class doesn't even have any. These are probably new posts. Would you go to would you go to 31570? Could you go to that class of mine, Rakita? Because I know I just updated some of those, so I know it has some.
Yeah, I just restored it so then we could see it this way.
Good. Okay, so see right here, this is a spark. This is one of the things you can do to build what your students wanting to do better and better in the class. So this gives them an automatic spark. If they've scored higher than what you wanted them to score, or they've provided a great resource, then I'll give them a spark. And that's where I do that. The second thing is PackBack provides what's called an insight report each week. And that insight report tells you the students that.
I'm sorry,
Yep.
Pam, to interrupt.
No.
But there's a question that I actually have as well that Sean
What is the
typed in the
spark?
chat.
Yeah.
If you could say instead of this is a spark, because I don't know what you're referring to.
Okay, so Rakita, sir, yeah, right here. See this little light bulb?
And Rakita, can you zoom in on this so folks can see it as well as she explains?
Yeah.
Perfect. There we go. Okay, see, each post you have this little light bulb, and this one says 0 and this one says 1. So in this one, my guess is that I put it there because this student scored an 86 on his curiosity score, meaning that he did a really good post. It had a qualified amount of words, and it has a resource connected. The next thing I do that encourages students, Rakita, could you move to one that has some feedback on it, like either the little hand right here, or here's one right there. Can you go to the top of that one? There it is. Okay, so see this little hand right here, Sean? So I'm going to answer your question in twofold. The little 1 by the light bulb means that I just immediately clicked on that and gave them like a kudo. The second thing is this little hand shows that I've given some feedback to this student, and that feedback will be, if it's a positive feedback, it's visible to everyone. And in this case, I wrote, wow, 100% curiosity score. I don't think I've ever seen this before. This is excellent. Next, I wrote, this question also prompted 2 other students to respond to your question. And that's what we're looking for. We're looking for students to interact with other students. So if they posted a question that was curious enough for 2 other students to respond to, that's exactly what we're looking for. And so that little hand on there tells the student they're doing a good job. And the third thing is, I also go back to and the star means that this was also a featured post, which means that PackBack itself said, oh, this is a really good post, really well done. We need to feature this. So this question might go out to other instructors that are teaching similar type class to give you ideas to give to your students. And these are all great things that benefit the student.
Pam, just as a point of clarification for folks who are used to using D2L discussions, instead of the instructor pinning the post, you're saying that it's PackBack that actually highlights and pins that post.
Absolutely. They feature it. You can still pin it. You can still go down and pin it and have it as as your first thing that comes up, but PackBack will feature it. And
Great.
then the high five comes from me.
Yeah. And I do want to let you all know that PackBack we call that auto featuring. If that's something that you don't want us to do, we can turn that off. It's
Absolutely.
so that's an option for you. So I've shown a little bit of kind of how Pam sets the expectations of what she'd like her students to see. Now I want to share how we now coach students to do that and what our AI is doing. So when a student comes to ask a new question, they will select the Ask a New Question button. Instead of being met with the general boring blank text box that you see in a normal LMS, they're being met with first some posting guidelines here on the right-hand side. So what these guidelines is doing is just basically giving them a few ideas as to what they can talk about. So have you tried applying what you're learning to the real world? Have you made used media to analyze what you're learning in class? Have you made a connection between this class and another course that you're taking? Or have you thought about it from your classmates' perspective? So we're trying to already get them to think bigger picture before they even start to ask the question. Once a student goes to type a question, I will use my standard question that I ask. Our AI has coaching that comes in once a student writes 20 words. So we want students to think about their lives and connect it back to their course. So I might say something like, oh, the other day I was watching TV and I saw an ad, I don't know, for soap. And it was yellow. I'm starting to type some things in here. Once I get to 20 words, I'm going to zoom out a little bit so you can see this. Now the right-hand side has changed. It has activated our instant feedback. The first thing that you're seeing is that it's giving you a predicted curiosity score range. So this is that number that Pam had referred to where the student had got like an 89 on their post that she gave a spark. We give the students a range. We do not give them their specific score because we don't want them working toward a score. We want them working toward skill attainment. But we know that students like instant gratification, so we built a little bit of that in there. It also will identify if the post might be flagged. So we have some community guidelines in place that our AI will review every post and flag items if they do not meet the community guidelines. I'll talk through what those are in a second. And then we will also let students know if there are any spelling or grammar errors. What's going into this curiosity score is these three C's here of academic writing. So the first piece is all around curiosity. So we want students to be writing open-ended questions. If, let's say, a student is not writing an open-ended question, it will be flagged. So that's why I have, oh, it appears your question is closed-ended. And I'm then given a link to learn more about what an open-ended question is and how I should formulate one. So we're coaching them as they're doing the work. It's also telling me, hey, to build your curiosity, add some detail in your description so we understand kind of where this thought process is coming from. The second piece is credibility, all around citing sources. Students can cite multiple sources as well. The way that this box works is that as long as they put something in here, then they'll get a little bit of points for sorted sources. And then the third C is all around communication. So we want students to add in images, videos. We want them to bold text or italicize it to make it easy to read for their students, for their audience. We want them to be thinking about that. These three C's go into what their ultimate curiosity score will be. It's a range of 0 to 100. The fourth C is all around convention. Now, this is where spelling and grammar come into place. While we coach students on these, we do not penalize them for any errors in spelling or grammar because we understand that they're English language learners who are potentially taking the class, and we don't want to, hit their confidence and ding them. We want them to still work on practicing. And then the last piece is that every post on this platform will be reviewed for plagiarism, both within PackBack. So we're looking at every post in PackBack to make sure students aren't plagiarizing from their classmates, but we're also looking across the World Wide Web with a similar kind of system as Turnitin to make sure that students are not plagiarizing. Any questions on the instant feedback? I do want to note
I'll pose a question that maybe a common question, are all 4 of these categories required? For example, if a teacher does not want to reinforce a specific convention category, what is their approach?
Great question. Great question. Yes. So the way that you can decide about these kind of features is through your curiosity minimum. So we have a way that you can set a curiosity floor, if you will, that your students have to meet. So let's say that you don't really care if your students cite sources, you just want them to come in here, ask some questions and interact with with their classmates. You might set your curiosity minimum at a 40, which is on the lower end, it's easier to achieve. But let's say that you want your students to cite sources and you want them to bring in extra images. You might set your curiosity minimum at a 60, because that's going to require more of that work from them. So that's how you'll differentiate, is through that curiosity score. And I'll walk through that once we enter the grade book to show you how all of those things connect to one another.
Thank you so much. We're at 30 minutes in. And again, if you have questions, put them in the chat feed and we'll keep moving.
Yep, we're doing perfect.
Rakita, is this where we were going to bring up self-citing? Or are we going to do that later?
No, yes. So that is something we can bring up here. Yeah, we were preparing for this meeting and we brought up the idea of the fact that students don't realize that they can cite themselves when they're doing work, or cite their own experience if they're talking about something from their own lives, and how that's something that you can encourage your students to do.
And this is a framework in terms of trying to build on students' funds of knowledge and their cultural experiences, which may not involve citing an external source. How do you still have an authentic post without citing an external source? Rakita says you can cite yourself. What a cool idea.
So just some things to think about. And and the key is that PackBack is flexible, and so it can work with how you want to run your class. I do want to also add in the caveat that right now I'm showing you all how we coach for questions. We also coach for responses, and we also coach for counter and supporting points as well, if you want your students to do debates in their PackBack community. So lots of levels of coaching there. So what I want to quickly do is run through kind of the feedback loop that we have in place. Oops. So on PackBack, a student writes a post and they receive real-time feedback. That's what I just showed you all. Once the post is submitted, our AI will review it for community guidelines. So this is if it's closed-ended, plagiarized, if it's asking a question like, oh, what did you get on exam question number 2, our AI will pick up on those things and flag them. Once a post is flagged, it's sent to humans here at PackBack to review for context, because we understand that you might be using the word hell in a theology or religion class, and that makes sense. If we do find out that the student has done something that they shouldn't, we're going to immediately remove that post from the platform. We're going to then send the student a coaching email to their PIMA student email account. They'll also get a notification within PackBack itself on why their post was taken down and what steps they need to do to edit and then revise their post. If they take those steps, they still will receive credit for the post. Again, this is all around students being able to practice and build the skills that we ultimately want them to do. Awesome. So there are also some kind of a feedback loop for instructors as well, if you will, where our AI is going to suggest some posts for you each week that you can feature, as Pam said. If you want to feature them, you can. If you want us to feature them for you, we will. It's up to you. You feature your posts as an instructor. You also give some feedback to your students directly as well. And then each week we're going to be we put together a newsletter that goes out to everyone in your class called the Curiosity Reader Digest. And it highlights, hey, these were some great posts that happened in the community. It's a way to highlight students who are doing well. It's also a way for students to keep a post check on what's happening in class.
And Rakita, I just want to pause on this to help folks keep in mind, like some of the text on this is a little bit small, but one of the points is no time to review, no worries. There's a range of engagement. If you're doing a discussion-rich text that requires a lot of writing and you're busy, but you want to make sure that they're writing a lot, the AI will support you, or you can dive in and do something that's closer to spot checking and giving selective feedback and offering praise. So it provides a range of experience for how immersive you want to be with the feedback experience with your students.
Perfect, absolutely. So I quickly showed kind of what the instructor's doing on that feedback loop. So what I'm going to show now is actually what that looks like on the platform. So Pam, we at first started talking about featured posts. So I would like to start there. On PackBack, when you decide to feature a post, it is highlighted in what we call our featured posts tab. So what this then becomes is a repository of great examples of student work that they can then model the behavior that Pam had determined that she wants them to do. So this is where you can highlight questions. You can also highlight responses as well that are of good quality. Let's say, for example, that you know as an instructor that you might want to use some questions from PackBack on your exam, which some instructors will do. This will be a great place to kind of move those questions over to serve as a potential study guide for your students as they're getting ready for exams. It's a number of ways how you can use these features, but that's just one additional example. So once a post has been featured and you can do feedback, all of those things are going to live under your options menu. So that's going to be your best friend. So you'll see, sorry about that, you'll see under your options menu, you have, this is where it would say feature or unfeature, and then you have feedback. So Pam had mentioned that there's two ways that you can do it. One is coaching. So this is done privately between you and that individual student. You can add in really whatever feedback you want to give. We just give some suggestions as to what you might write, but the feedback is up to you. But let's say that you come across a post and your student has done something wrong and you want to give them some feedback, but you also want to make them redo the post. You can check this box and it'll send them your private feedback and tell them to edit their post. But you might just want to give feedback and not make them do it over. That's up to you. The other option.
One piece on that last page, or for both of these really, if you're in the practice of keeping a Google Doc open with feedback snippets that personalize the kinds of feedback you give, you can still cut and paste from other things right into here, or you can use a voice typing extension to be able to talk directly into the tool.
The flip side of that is that praise, and that's the example that we saw in the green box under that post, and it's done publicly. So again, you can give some custom feedback about what they did well. And from here, you can feature the post directly as you're giving feedback. So just hit both of those at the same time, so you're not having to do multiple ones. There's also an option to pin a post. Pinning it is like basically making it using your community in a bulletin board type style. This is where, let's say, for example, if like Pam does as the instructor, sometimes she will post her own questions. She will post the question and then she'll pin it. And it denotes it in this gray box. The apple lets the student know that it's the instructor who posted it. And then they are known like, okay, now I should interact with this post because the instructor pinned it. So those are just some of the kind of tools that you can use to interact with your students. The other thing I want to show you all is what's called the Learner Leaderboard. So I love this. This is probably one of my favorite features on PackBack. It's a ranking of all of your students in the class. Now, you'll be able to see everyone. The student will only be able to see themselves. So wanted to put that caveat there. It just lets you very quickly take a pulse check on how your students are doing in the class. Now, Pam, how do you go about using the Learner Leaderboard?
Yeah, thank you, Rakita. I was hoping you were going to ask.
Yeah.
So every week, I send out an email that tells everyone who was doing the best on the Insight report, meaning their curiosity score has gone up, it has doubled, it has expanded in some way. So I get that from the Insight report, which comes from PackBack. The second thing I always post is these 3 students are on the top of the leaderboard this week, and I want a big shout out to them. And you will not believe how students will compete with each other to get on top of the leaderboard. It's a thing with this generation. I don't know what it is, but it's a thing, and they want to be on top of the leaderboard. So I use it in that way. I use it as a big shout out, and this is an email that I send to everyone, so everyone else sees how everyone else is doing, and I will even start to see comments in posts. If student, your Curiosity Mind number 1 is on there, Curiosity Mind number 3 will say, "Hey, I saw you at the top of the leaderboard. Fantastic!" And this intrinsic motivation for today's generation is just, it really does drive. It drives the page. And I wanted to go back to one more thing and also note that on the leaderboards too, I see that this builds, I don't even know how to say this. It builds they're wanting to add more to the post or to make the post more interactive because of that level of competition.
So Pam, just to clarify from your experience, when you have students that are starting out who may have a lower score, do you see them change positions on the leaderboard quite a bit?
Absolutely. I've actually seen a student who was at the bottom of the leaderboard. By the end of the class is at the top of the leaderboard. And that exact student, I will never forget my second semester using PackBack. That student wrote me a private email, which I still kept. I copied and pasted it. It said that PackBack gave her such self-confidence in doing posts that now she's doing better in all of her other classes. And I'm telling you, it brought me to tears.
Okay, sorry, I didn't know that, but it's those types of things when I hear from students too, that just, it really is an exercise in confidence building, I see, for a lot of these students. And it just shows that like you're watching, you know, when you celebrate them, that you're seeing what they're doing, you're watching, and it's great quality, and it means so much coming from you as the instructor when they're in these spaces. One other way that I like to encourage instructors to use the learner leaderboard as well is kind of in the reverse of, if you're noticing that a student maybe has been on the bottom of your leaderboard for 2 weeks in a row, that can be a time where you can now do some very early intervention before it gets to the point where the student has maybe failed an exam or you know, missed a bunch of assignments. So you can use it in that way as well. Awesome, good point there. So what I want to do is I want to pop into the gradebook, and I want to spend a little bit of time there because I really want to explain how it all works. So very quickly, what I'm showing is the grading requirements. Now note that these are at the very top of the curiosity of PackBack when a student comes in. So they know immediately when they come in what the expectation is and when their deadline is due. So there should never be a student saying like, oh, I forgot, or I didn't know. We make it very visible. So,
and you as the teacher, you as the instructor are the ones who set this out when you're setting up your PackBack. Sorry.
Yes, exactly. So this is something that, you know, if you're going to be brand new using PackBack in a course that you've never used it before, so you and I would sit together and look at your syllabus and your requirements and figure out how we want to set up the grade for PackBack. And from there, you can, you know, make changes term over term if there's things that you want to change, but I am a support system to help with this initial setup. I want you all to know that. So basically what we're looking at is that each week, PAM students have to come in on Sundays by 10 p.m. Arizona time. They need to write one question that has a curiosity score of 30 at minimum. If they hit that score of 30, then they will get 5 points. The 5 points is the actual grade. We're also asking them to do 2 responses, but we're asking them to hit a 40 curiosity score on their responses. So we want these responses to be a bit more robust than the question. And you can set that up however you want. You can weigh your questions heavier, your responses heavier. Again, there's flexibility there. And if they hit that for the question, they will get as well 5 points. So 1 question, 2 responses at 5 points each. They're going for a score of 15 each week. Any questions on how the curiosity score informs the actual points? Great.
One more thing, Rakita, too, is you also set this information up here. You tell PackBack when do you want students to post by. So I open mine on Mondays, I close them on Sundays. This particular deadline was Saturday because of Mother's Day, I think. So most of the time you customize them to, yeah, thank you, Rakita, for showing this page. So you can set when you want them to respond, and then PackBack generates the report based on when you want it done.
Can I just clarify here for a moment? So do you find everybody, I guess Pam in particular, do your students wait till Sunday and do all their posts the day before they're due, or are they able to, because of the leaderboard, be more active in the discussion forum?
You know, that's one thing, Reed, I would really like to say that they go in, and I used to have up here where it says 1 week or weekly or once every 2 weeks or more than once a week. I used to set it up where they had to post their question by Thursdays and respond by Sundays. And I found that a lot of students missed those Thursdays and were losing points and got frustrated. So I made it all Sunday. And because of that, a lot of students do wait until Sunday to post. There are a group of them that will post all week long. I don't know what the demographic is of that or why that happens, but yeah,
And
there
let
are
me just
some.
let me just ask a follow-up on that. Sometimes we'll prompt students to respond to those with the least number of posts. Is there ever scenarios in which you don't see certain students getting responses from their peers? And how, if so, how do you address that kind of social isolation that can exist in an online forum?
Well, I can tell you one of the things I do is when I go in and give them, when I notice that there's no response, I'll go in and look at the question and I'll do some coaching. And sometimes I'll say things like, this was a similar question that was asked by Johnny. So that's probably why the discussion isn't happening on your feed. Or I would say, you could have made this question a little better if you'd have brought up a scenario based on Black Lives Matter. And maybe then this question would have been answered. So that, I think that comes from the coaching. And again, that's why I like to spend the quality of my time coaching a student like that, as opposed to just blah, 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 blah.
Wonderful, Pam. And just as a brief note, we've got 16 minutes. We do also, because this is a tool that can be used both in STEM and humanities, we have faculty and department heads in the room who are asking specific questions about, for example, the equation editor, because there is a LaTeX editor built into this tool.
Yes.
We just want to make sure to hit those points as we close up. We've got about 16 minutes left.
Perfect. I did forget to show that. I wanted to very quickly show one thing. So we have ways that you can sort your feed, and undiscovered would be how you would find those posts that maybe don't have any responses. So you can tell your students, all right, this week I want you to go and make at least one of your responses to a question that doesn't have one. That's one model that you could do. You can coach students on why they don't have responses. So there are ways that you can do it, but we do highlight those for you. Very quickly to show the LaTeX editor. So this is something that would come in handy for chemistry, physics, any type of math courses where you can create your formulas directly into your PackBack posts. You also have the capability to add in any additional links or videos. So if you wanted to do that. And then we also have the ability to write code directly in PackBack as well. So if this is an engineering course or something like that where they're working on code. Awesome point there. Perfect. If any other question, I want to take a second just to pull, before I pop back into the gradebook, to see any other chat questions that I might want to touch base on.
So the questions that are coming in, I think we can hold to the end, because I want to keep focused. A lot of instructors exploring this will want to know, well, how do I get started in the first place?
Yep.
We've looked at the gradebook a little bit. We've looked about how the tool looks. So there's the why and a little bit of the how we use it, but the setup we haven't really addressed very much yet.
Yeah. So basically, what we'll do is I'll walk through what the actual setup looks like. So when you are using PackBack, we have what's called LTI integration. All of this information is ported over directly from D2L. The second that you decide you want to use PackBack, we'll pull all of this in based on what's in D2L. From there, you can determine if you want to have any additional people join your class. So if you have, let's say you're the department chair and you want your adjuncts to see how you run the course before they run it for themselves, you can add them in so they can kind of shadow what that looks like. From there, you can determine if you want to add sections. So you can create as many sections as you want if you want kind of the small group capability built within your online discussion. With that, you have two ways that you can have your students see it. One is that all of the students see the full class by default, or where they see their section group by default. Either way, they'll be able to toggle back and forth between their section and the full class.
That's such a good feature. That's really a great feature.
If they don't find a question that they want to respond to in their group, they can go crowdsource and find bigger ones. From there, this is where we start doing gradebook stuff, where you will set up the deadlines, first starting with the cadence, then determining the actual weeks that you want. So let's say that you know that this is a holiday, you can just delete that, skip that deadline. It's a holiday or it's spring break, you can just skip it. So students won't have to post. Once you do that, this is where you actually determine, so once you've set kind of when they're posting, this is where you determine what they're posting. So it looks very much like, how many points is the question worth, what your curiosity minimum is. We tell you what the minimum correlates to. So a 30 is kind of an introductory post, all the way, and I'm not changing this, Pam, I promise, all the way up to a 75 or an 80, which is an advanced level post. So you can choose anywhere along that range and intermediate as well. Do the same for your responses. So we know kind of what you're looking at, what your students are aiming for each week. And from there, you're set and ready to go. We have a syllabus template that you can use where you can download, and it's all the language you need for your syllabus already there and ready to go based on the parameters that you have set in place. And that's it. You don't even have to invite your students to PackBack. They will automatically be added in PackBack based on your roster for the class in each well. So as soon as the class starts, and they select PackBack, the link, it'll create a profile for them.
So Rakita, just as a point of information, part of the LTI includes the student access directly to PackBack. Just as another point of confirmation, currently the LTI does not include a gradebook integration,
Correct.
but it does. Does it integrate deadlines as well yet? I don't think it does.
So all of that will be a part of our big gradebook sync is what we call it. That is scheduled to come out later in the fall. We're in the process of testing it out. We want to just do it well before we
Wonderful.
unveil it.
Just want to make sure folks know what that integration looks like. So basically they're using the tool within PackBack and linking to PackBack to do a lot of the fun stuff in a separate tab.
So the goal will be to, once the gradebook is ready to go, where you will just, it'll just be ported over directly into PackBack. We'll have its options where it'll automatically go, or where you can set where you want to review it first before it goes over there. But that's kind of the initial ideas here. One other thing I want to show you is, as of right now, because we don't have the automatic passback, all you do is you go to generate a report when you're ready to pull your grades. You select, you can do it by an individual week. Pam, do you usually pull grades weekly? Oh, you're muted. Oh, sorry, Pam, you're on mute.
There we go. Yes, I pull the report every Monday morning. And I have it set up to generate the report every Monday morning, and then I manually input the grades. It's really not that hard. And so I don't mind doing it because I know the quality of the product.
Yeah, awesome. And questions about that, I can definitely help again with any questions about any of those things. Now, that is kind of a really high level overview of PackBack. Again, there are a ton of other features and tools and ways that you can use that I would love to have, conversations with you. So if, let's say, you are wondering, okay, how might I bring PackBack into one of my math courses? If you're working on, it depends on, of course, what math class it is. What PackBack would look like in a statistics class would look very different from what it might look like in a history course or an engineering course. So these are courses that we have been used in, but I would want to structure it for really what your course learning outcomes are and how we're going to use PackBack to get there.
So just as a heads up, we have 9 minutes left. We do have really great questions. If we cannot address them in the recorded section, we will put them on the website as FAQs.
I want to take it for questions. I just want to have this on the screen to tell you all what the kind of process is. So you've already done step one. This is step one here. This is where I would say, if you want to use PackBack, or you're considering using PackBack in any of your courses, or you want your adjuncts to use it, I would love to have time to meet with you and talk specifically about what you're thinking. If you already know, like, yes, I'm teaching these courses, I want PackBack integrated for the summer. If it's going to be for the summer, especially, please let me know as soon as possible so we can get you ramped up. And if we need to do any adjunct trainings, we can get them ramped up for the summer start. There's enough time for that. Also, if it's for the fall, so then I can start planning as well. But I want to take some time for questions here in the last few minutes that we have.
Then can I just give a couple comments that I haven't been able to throw out there yet?
Okay.
The two main things that benefit students, and that is what this is all about. Number one, when I originally started using PackBack, I did 2 victimology classes side by side, 2 identical classes, the only difference being one had PackBack and one did not. And in the class with PackBack, I had anywhere between a 13 and a 17% grade improvement in the class with PackBack. That was the only difference. Secondly, the writing skills of my students. Not only did I find that they were writing better questions and better answers, but when I had a quiz question that had an essay, for instance, instead of getting a 1-sentence response, I got a paragraph or more. In my essays, overall research papers, I had better use of references because of the feedback they had gotten from PackBack. So those three things alone, for me, are worth it to help students improve their overall skill knowledge in that Bloom's level, not just in my class, but in all their classes.
Right. There are some questions that may come in on accessibility, and there's a slide that follows this one that we might want to hit.
Yep.
Just to make sure. And again, any questions that come in, this is the time to pose them into the chat feed. We'll try to address some of them as we close, and we'll also move through the final slides. What should we know, Rakita, about accessibility and security here?
Yes, so PackBack is very, very committed to accessibility. We're actually right now in the process of running internally crowdsourcing about any kind of accessibility questions that we might have gotten that might be like one-off things that individual students or individual instructors need. But we are up to date on our standards for the WCAG, the VPAT as well, fully FERPA compliant. And then also we are currently running the LTI 1.3 integration, and that's what we're working on for our gradebook, making sure that we can be integrated with this new LTI version. So if anyone has further questions about accessibility, if there are certain tools that they know that their students are using or that they're using or their adjuncts are using that you want to know about, please let me know. Our engineers are super committed to accessibility and work very closely if there is something that we need to.
Thank you so much, Rakita. If you could also go to the next slide, I want to call everyone's attention to the process at Pima for requesting. I think we skipped over a slide here. Yeah, there we go. So if you want PackBack in a specific course or in a shell that you're working with just to practice, a sandbox, make sure to go into D2L, click on Help, and then choose the Submit D2L Work Ticket /Faculty option. This will open up a TDX work ticket. That's our ticketing system at the college. And this is what alerts the help desk that you want this to be added to a specific course shell. That's the way we're currently doing it. That might shift in the future, but at current, that's the process you're going to need to use. If you go to the next slide, I think we just go back to the any questions page. Again, we're still trying to get questions. If you have feedback for us as well, let's go to the next slide. We have a simple feedback loop where we're just getting information on what was helpful, what would you like to know more of. And if there's any burning questions you wanted to pose that you didn't pose, you can use this. We will put those questions into the website under the faculty FAQ page. The next page, we really want you to sign in. Don't forget to, whether you're watching this live or as a pre-recorded. And the sign-in sheet is visible on this next slide. This is a Excel spreadsheet that comes out of a Google form that Rakita and I both have access to, so that we can know who's been completing this form and who might need support, who might be curious about making their students curious through PackBack. And then we also have our contact information in the final two slides. So if we advance to the next one, you'll see our information, Rakita. And also Pam's, who's kindly offered to be available in the next slide. Pam is an expert at using this stuff at the local level. She's seen incredible outcomes and improvements. I want to shift gears to some of these Q&A that have come in. Most importantly, Kelly O'Keefe, one of our department heads, asks the question about how do we support second language learners using the tool? Again, these are great critical questions, and anything that is a nuanced question, we want to try to bring it in while we're still recording if possible.
Yeah, so I would say the first thing is just to set the expectation that you understand that they are English language learners. I think that goes a long way for their confidence before they even start any work, is that you understand where they're coming from. Letting them know that they can reach out to you if they need additional support, letting them know about the writing centers on campus, all of those types of resources early on so that they know that you understand where they're coming from.
And Rakita, just to drill into that question a little bit, if a student is anxious about their use of grammar or spelling, but we're trying to promote fluency so that they can connect with the content through writing, what does the tool do if they do misspellings or grammar errors as they're working? What's the experience like for that student?
Yeah, it's very much like Grammarly, where it'll be highlighted red underneath. So similar to what they would normally see, it'd be highlighted red. We would let them know, like, oh, if it's a spelling error, just kind of like what the actual spelling of the word is and allow them to accept it or ignore it. And then with grammar, it's a similar thing, but then we also will link additional articles. So let's say, for example, we say, oh, you're speaking in a passive voice and you might want to switch to an active voice. We're going to link them to an article about what is an active voice. How do you know when you're using it? What are some tips that you should keep in mind? So they're consistently learning from the instructor, from the tool of PackBack as well, at the same time. And I think that way it's they don't see it as subjectively coming from the instructor, where it's kind of objectively coming from PackBack, which I think sometimes will make students feel a little bit more comfortable that it's not that their instructor is maybe picking on them or pointing out things. It's that they're truly trying to help level them up, and help them learn. So I think setting the expectation and then letting them know these resources are here to help you, will go a long way for English language learners.
And just Pam, I want to make sure that we note her point in the feedback thread. I think you posted it as a direct message rather than a group message, but relating to working with deaf students. And also I want to, maybe you could speak to that. And Rakita, can you also speak to the use of this tool for STEM? Again, we have at least 2 math department folks with us. We have a business faculty member in the room. And how is the tool used to support math or STEM instruction or any kind of an instruction that's outside of the humanities? But first, can we go to Pam to speak about working with deaf students and the tool?
Yeah, I had a deaf student in my class this semester at Mesa Community College, and she has given me feedback that she has really enjoyed the feedback that's coming from PackBack, because deaf students tend to not write incomplete sentences because they sign with signs. And she has told me that it's helped her to be able to participate. And that's amazing.
So a few things that I want to jump in about STEM classes is really PackBack is a way for students to dive a little bit more deep into the concepts that you all are talking about. So let's say, for example, in a business course or in a STEM class, you could be talking in a biology course. Let's say you're talking about ecology and a student has a very surface level question. They could ask hypotheticals. Okay, what if we got rid of all the shrimp? What if there were no more shrimp on the earth? How would that change the food web? What might be the resulting consequence for the predators that eat shrimp? So they can start thinking hypothetically in those types of STEM courses. Another way that they can do is they can start to bring in DEI initiatives into these STEM courses. So one thing I love to do in like chemistry, math classes, things of that nature is take an analysis of the textbook, if you will. Who's writing this textbook? Where are they coming from? What are their backgrounds in the field? Who are we not talking about in the field? What discoveries might they have done? So then you're getting a broader understanding of not just the subject matter, but the field overall, the history of it, if you will. You can dive deeper into the history as well. You can work on kind of, for math classes, thinking about, let's say you're working on a math concept. Well, you can use different data to understand that math concept. Maybe you're pulling data from somewhere else, and then you're having your students analyze that through the lens of a math concept that you're working on. There are a lot of different examples, and that's why I really like to work with adjuncts or department heads specifically to look at the classes, because I might be able to recognize things that you might not. And so some individualized conversations might be beneficial if you are considering pulling PackBack into a math course or a heavy STEM class. We do work with math, engineering, all of those things.
We're going to do rapid fire questions as we close, because we do want to finish in 2 minutes, but there's some great questions that have come in. First off, we want to look at the question of what the tool looks like. Is it usable on a smartphone?
Yes.
So it is usable. Maybe you could show a background image if possible. That would be great. But also a second question had come in around, is it possible to use it as extra credit or as part of an existing grade?
So I would say we typically discourage from doing that, and instead encourage that you have it be 10 to 15% of your overall grade. And the reason why is because if it's only worth 1 or 2%, your students will not take it seriously. They just won't. So it has to be worth some meat. Now, as far as it being, if you want to add in extra credit, we would say have PackBack be PackBack itself, and then do extra credit opportunities on top of the basic ones. Don't just have PackBack be extra credit, because you won't see the results that you are hoping to see.
Rakita, there's a second question that's coming that Ginny Harmelink may be able to address. Ginny is one of our fabulous education faculty leaders. relating to where we locate discussions within D2L. Ginny has an innovative way of placing PackBack into the existing discussions tool as external links within the discussions tool. Ginny, if you are available and might be able to speak to this, that would be great. But the broader question from Sean Hellman, writing department head, is do you replace some discussions in D2L with PackBack? And does it become more work for your students? Any thoughts, I guess, from Pam, if you're available? And Ginny did unmute yourself. So any thoughts you have, Ginny, if we can go first to you.
So embedding external links into the discussions via PackBack, is that possible?
Yes, I mean, that's the question I think I was posing to you was, how are you doing it currently with EDU classes? Because I think you've been playing with the tool and using discussions to link just with a regular hyperlink into PackBack. Is that correct?
Actually, we were part of a beta test, and we actually used it in one of our EDU courses with high marks from the instructor and the students. So in the fall, that will be embedded. It'll be an opt-in. You'll have to opt in for the instructor teaching this course, and it's been fabulous.
Thanks, Jen. Yeah, so it'd be kind of like how we've done it is kind of the module model, if you will, where you might have like, lesson 1 and then all the resources for lesson 1's there, and then it'll say lesson 1 discussion. There's a link to PackBack, then they can click it, and we have that kind of duplicated across all of the lessons.
And is it the same link each time, or is it different links? Thank you, Rakita. So it's, again, it's ease of use. When Ginny's doing it, she puts the same link into every D2L discussion, or you can create a content item within a module. There's different ways that you can approach creating a linked page, creating content that has a link, or creating a discussion with a link, but it's the same link any way you slice it.
I would like to add 2 things. Well, I replaced all of my discussions with PackBack, just to let you know, so that all the discussion is going on within PackBack community, because that helps create the community. And number 2, 20% has been the magic number for me. If you have 20% or more of your grade from the discussion board, they do participate. I started lower and inched up, and when I got a little bit past 20, like one time I went to 25% of the grade, it was too much, and I lost students' participation, really. And so I have found that the magic number is 20%.
So there are more advanced questions coming in, but we are past our time, folks. So if you do have further questions, please make sure to go ahead and do that feedback loop form and the sign-in sheet as well, and use either tool to let us know what are your burning questions that remain, because we had good questions that came in relating to, for example, how do we approach course cloning with existing content? How do we approach templates? A number of things we didn't get to. Please visit our website. We will be following up with you. Thank you again to Rakita and Pam for making your time available today.
You're very, very welcome.
All right, folks, we'll see you soon.
Bye-bye.
Have a great rest of your day.